He enjoys helping engineering teams around the world discover new and creative ways to work. He's a proponent of the community-first product development. So let us hear from him on this topic of how Gen AI, agentic AI, and MCP can impact cloud platforms. Rob?
So, how many of you already aware about the Q astronauts? What does that mean? Okay, very few, right? So, it is about the good number of certification which is bundled together. For people who achieve that certification is given two type of titles. One is Q astronauts and another is the golden Q astronauts. As per my understanding, it is 5 certification bundle which is successful completion. The first grade of Q astronauts will be provided. And it is 11 certificate bundle which is together who has been achieving is the golden Q astronaut, right? So these people are being very consistent on learning and make these achievements in a very gradual way. Thank you so much for being here. We're looking forward for the upcoming presentation. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Thanks for being here on a Saturday afternoon. It's always a very happy occasion when we are presenting at an event in Chennai. There's no travel, there's not as much traffic, but today morning was a challenge getting here. But just very quickly, I wanted to introduce myself, and before I did that, anybody who's heard a talk from me before in Chennai knows that we don't commence without our salute to the big man. So I am Ram. I've not had a chance to meet a lot of you. I work at the Linux Foundation. I work on their community side, especially for 2 projects. One is Cloud Foundry and the other one being OpenSSF. So cloud platforms and open source security is my jam. By today's standards, I'm quite illiterate in all of these things. I'm not any of these fancy things that will qualify me to immediately be an expert of any sort. But having spoken to a lot of people in the community and having worked with a lot of people in their open source ways and means, I've managed to pick up a few things along the way, and this is just a chance to share all of those lessons. So today's talk is going to be about AI and platforms and what it is like today and what it is going to be like tomorrow. And whenever I use these words in a sentence, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is, Vela irukuma, vela pocha. So as a developer, this is what everybody is thinking. Will I lose my job to AI? So I don't know the answer, but hopefully we keep learning, we keep trying to find new ways to work and trying to confuse our managers long enough so that they give us a job.
Thanks for the answer.
So, reactions are always, Intel lost 5,000 jobs, but my little startup in Coimbatore is still safe. So what do I have to worry about? Right? So it's a very interesting time, I think, to be in this field, to be working on a lot of these problems, and to be working through these technology challenges of today. And this whole talk is designed around a lot of things that I have discovered in my experience of talking to people about platforms and talking to them about AI and talking to them about what will things look like in a few years from now, or are there ways that I can do my job better and things like that. So, just like in typical, what you're supposed to be doing on a Saturday afternoon is, getting biryani and watching a movie, but in typical fashion, this talk will also have all of these different components, okay? I've tried to cram as much information I know about AI and platforms into this, but except for like the slow walk, I think Mani does it better than I do. So AI and platforms. I thought they were two completely different things in completely different universes, not having to compete with each other or things like that. But slowly, as I started to discover more things about platforms and all of these things and all of this AI stuff coming up, it seems like they're really at odds with each other. And for those who don't know, platform engineering was the AI before AI. So now how everybody is talking about AI, every conference. So I speak at a lot of conferences, and if you want your talk to get accepted, just put AI in the title. That's what I used to do. Then it sort of changed, and so now it used to be put platform engineering in the title, your talk will get accepted. Now it is put AI in the title and description enough number of times, it will get accepted. But the key is, even 3 years ago, even now, nobody should understand what's in your abstract. So then your talk will definitely get accepted. So the point is, there's a lot of AI engineering and AI tools that are sort of starting to invade into the platform space. And so I had that same reaction. If all the work that I've done all the work that I've done in the past 5 years are no longer relevant, but will the next 5 years also turn as irrelevant as quickly, or will it be faster, will it be slower, or is there a future where all of these platform concepts can coexist with a lot of the AI stuff that's coming? So let's take a look. In a flashback, okay? So this is now back in 2011, 2012. How many folks here have heard of Heroku? Yeah? So good, you're all above 40. Back in the day when Heroku came into sort of the horizon, it really changed things around, especially for me. So I was one of the, I wouldn't say early users, but I was a fairly early adopter of Heroku, and just this whole experience of git push Heroku master, and then for those who don't know, Heroku will take your source code from that git branch, create a deployment, how, nobody knows, nobody cares to be honest, create a deployment and then assign a URL to that deployment. Like it will create an ingress and then it will give you that URL so that you can paste that URL inside your browser and access the application. So this was the power of Heroku. Heroku ran on the cloud. It was like magic. You all heard of this elves and the shoemaker story, right? One old tata will be there, he and his party will put some shoe leather and some things out, and then they'll go to sleep, and then when they wake up, suddenly magically shoes will be made. So Heroku was like that. Nobody knew how it was doing things, but it got things done, and in record time. And then along came this other platform project that said, hey, Heroku is not open source. I cannot deploy Heroku to my own servers. And so let's create this open source project that does all of the same things that Heroku does, but make it open and make it more accessible, and you can bring your own cloud, bring your own infrastructure, and we'll give you that Heroku experience that you wanted. So this is sort of 2014, 2012, 2014 or something like that, okay? And then there was another big project that came up. This is now, OpenShift is now under Red Hat, which is now under IBM, which is now, I don't know, man. Whenever I say IBM, I lose track of what's going on in the world. But OpenShift is another popular project that did quite the same. OpenShift started around 2015, I want to say, which is 10 years, which is like 1,000 years in the real world. It's 10 years. Like, it's like dog years, right? So when you say your dog is 10 years old, it's almost dying. Just like that in the software world, if it's 10 years old, it's ancient. So OpenShift is almost like 10 years old right now. Obviously, they're not having parties, but OpenShift also redefined a lot of the platform experience overall, where you had a code base or an application code, and then you handed that application code over to OpenShift, and then OpenShift created images out of it and did deployments. And you had this I won't say easy, but you had this convenient way where you didn't have to do a lot of the manual work. So they introduced what is known as a substrate or an abstraction, and as an engineer or as a developer who's writing code, all you had to do was give this entity in the cloud access to your code, and it will figure out the way to deploy it. So that was the way in which all of these projects operated. And then along the way, the whole technology world discovered something else. So this is 2014 to 2016. Docker came along. Everybody using Docker here? Yes, no, maybe. Okay, so most people are using Docker. Whether or not in a production sense, I don't care. If you just type Docker build on your laptop, you know what I'm talking about. People who don't know what Docker is might find this a very wrong meetup. But glad you came, enjoy the food, get gifts and everything, but you probably won't understand anything that's going on here. So Docker came along, and they really changed the game in terms of how we package our applications. Docker created this way in which you don't give your code to any entity in the cloud or anything, but you can package your code in a manner that can be deployed very easily. So remember that black box that these systems created of, okay, hand me your code and I'll figure out what to do. The substrate pushed one level away and said, this is my code, this is how you have to containerize it in the form of a Docker file. And then they said, now this artifact that we have is more suitable for deployment. And why Docker continues to enjoy this kind of popularity is, irrespective of what language or framework you were using, Docker was able to create a container for the application. So your Java applications, your PHP applications, your Python applications, it just didn't matter. You can write a simple Docker file for it. Obviously, the start command will change for every different language and language family. But the idea that here's source code, here's a Docker file, create a container, deploy it, boom. That was very smooth and very simple. And remember, this was the time when microservices became a thing. And if you read about microservices, every single blog or every single book or every single written word about microservices will say, allow your team to write services in different languages, however they like. And I don't know which idiot put this as the primary advantage of microservices. Obviously, that person has not handled a team at all, because as an engineering manager, I knew Java, I knew a little bit of Spring and all that. I learned some JavaScript because everybody was talking about it. And then suddenly we hire these new batch of kids and they just want to write in Go. And then suddenly one other person will read some Hacker News article about TypeScript and they'll say, gee, TypeScript, ella problems solve. So anyhow, so when Docker came about, this problem of how to create a CI system or a CD system for all of these language families was really solved. So I like Docker not because it was able to create an artifact for deployment, but it solved this microservices headache for me as an engineering person. And then after that was this whole thing about, okay, now I have 50 Docker containers, each with like 9 instances. How do I maintain those? And to be honest, this OpenShift and Cloud Foundry and all these tools already solve these problems. But as an industry, somehow we just like to invent new problems and pretend as if we are solving them. And that is very difficult. We find some new tool and then we'll start solving for that, and then we'll. Anyhow, they're throwing a party. I don't want to badmouth them. Thank you, sir. Somebody was recording here.
Yeah, this.
Yeah.
Please keep these.
Closed room discussion only. But anyhow, so that is the kind of ecosystem that we've seen for the past 10 years. So today, the CNCF is huge. There's like tons and tons of stuff going on in the platforms space. There's a banner, I think they'll bring it out at some point. It says 240 different projects or 250 different projects and infinite possibilities, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's nice marketing, but when it comes to engineering, my manager wants me to find the way of doing ingress, with the way of doing load balancing, with one single way to do storage. And I mean, 250 projects is nice, but what's the one path that's useful for me? And that's where a lot of the platform engineering stuff started to kick in. And people started to say, okay, having like 250 projects in the CNCF ecosystem is nice. It gives us an opportunity to party every year for the next how many years. So last year was Kubernetes 10 years, this year is CNCF 10 years, next year will be Istio 10 years, year after that will be, I don't know, something else 10 years. Anyhow, it's very easy to celebrate an ecosystem that has diversity and all that, but what is the path for a team to take? How do we move forward with this? And so, if you look at a lot of the platform projects, so this is Heroku, and it says the application platform, deploy, scale happily. Then there's other smaller platform team examples that are also saying, pretty much the same thing, reduce engineering burden, this, that. You look at the OpenShift website, that's also saying comprehensive, consistent developer experience, modernize. Platform.sh, another popular platform tool, and that's also saying the same thing. After a while, you get bored of it. It's the same thing that people are trying to advertise again and again. If you look at Cloud Foundry, our website also says the same thing. There's another team that says smarter platform engineering, as if the rest of us are a little dumber than them. Then there's this team that says, build and deploy in a clip. Nobody is deploying in a clip, man. Okay? So then there's new products out there that are just the same kind of messaging over and over again. I get a little tired of all of this. And then, you have the very abstract folks, deploy anything, anywhere, anything, anywhere. 4 apps later, it will just crash and burn on you, and then you ask them, oh, we are not optimized for this particular framework, we are not optimized for that. So it's very annoying and very irritating when you go through this whole ream. And these are like, you can talk about enterprise grade, you can talk about open source pack, all of it. It's all the same thing. So platform engineering is trying to solve a problem that does exist, but it's very hard because everybody has a different opinion of what the platform should be. One person says Contour is the best way to do ingress and networking. One person will say, no, Istio is everything. And another person will say, if it's not eBPF based, it's waste. And then somebody will say, no, hotel regular is enough. We don't need eBPF because there's performance issues for us. So everybody has an opinion, and so you have this huge raft of platform projects out there that are trying to accomplish pretty much the same thing. And what happens when AI comes into the mix, or what happens when other tools pick things up? So you have the same thing over and over and over again, and then all of these other tools will come that will say, hey, we are observability as a platform, we are security platform, we are container management platform, and to me it all sounds kind of the same. So this is an example of security, cloud native application protection platform. So just add, right now, like I said, if you add AI, your product will sell. If you used to add platform 1 year ago, your product used to sell. Now, again, everything is a platform. And the one thing that made me really sad of all these is, there's this company called Dagger. I don't know how many people are following. It came out of the team that made Docker. Of course, very creative. It had to be another 6-letter word that started with D and ended in ER. Maybe they were trying to reuse stickers or t-shirts, I don't know. But they started off as a CI tool. It became a Dagger platform. And then finally they became like an AI company. So I was really sad because And what started as a CA company became AI company. And okay, I mean, you have your ways and means of doing things, but it's very sad when you think about everybody wanting to jump onto the platform game and everybody wanting to do the AI game. But if you remember, the reason I say remember is ஒரு டீ குடிச்சா எல்லாமே மறந்துடும். So he very rightly pointed out one thing. There can be so many things that go on, but are we focusing on the dev experience and the ops experience? Okay, so this is something that he brought up, and I really like that, and I appreciate him for putting the focus squarely back on what it means to actually be a platform and what are the capabilities that you're delivering. And so, because this is a birthday party, we will say a nursery rhyme that's suitable for 10 years or less. Everybody knows this, yes? Jack and Jill. Bells have to be on plate, but anyhow, Jack down, we all know this, right? Let's adapt that to what we are doing at work, okay? Dev and Ops teams went to work to deploy an app to the server, left fell down and broke prod down, and Ops had layoff after. Because it's always the Ops folks who are not seeing the pager, நீங்க என்ன லீவ் எடுக்கிறீங்க, சார் இன்னைக்கு சனிக்கிழமை, ஓ அப்படியாப்பா நான் மறந்துட்டேன், பட் நான் ஆஃபீஸில் இருக்கேன், நீ வீட்டில் தானே இருக்கேன். You all know those very difficult conversations that SREs have, especially those who are on duty and on call, and all of those difficult times that people have. So, this is a serious problem that has its roots in toil, it has its roots in what is expected of an ops team and things like that, and it is a convenient problem if AI can solve it for me. There's this very interesting quote by somebody: I wish AI does my laundry so that I can write poetry, as opposed to AI writing poetry and me doing laundry, right? So it's something like that. Is there an AI path inside platforms so that some of this work can be avoided, some of this stuff can be made better? And if anybody has any idea of how Kubernetes is architected, and obviously if I have to give a talk in infosys and all, it has to be serious with architecture diagrams. So I have this one, I'm not going to go into it. Anybody who's looked at Kubernetes architecture knows that it's difficult. This is the kind of API request that you have to generate. And whenever I try to see this or decipher this and try to understand what's going on, it's very hard for me. And I'm sure it's hard for some of you as well, except and even if it's beyond him, there's a board in it. So, I just wanted to give a shout out to them. I appreciate Sarah doing that before me, but it's very hard. You need to have enormous amounts of knowledge and talent in order to accomplish this. And so there is an AI path to kind of solve this. And I just thought I'll quickly demo some of this. So let's see. I have a platforms thing that I'll demo first. So there is a platform tool called Kubevela. Okay, so have people heard of it? Kubevela, yes, no? Okay, obviously you don't raise your hand. Cubestronauts know all about it. So when this community came to know that, okay, human beings are having difficulty in defining applications and therefore in deploying them, let's create a human-friendly model. This is what they came up with. One big, long YAML file. Okay? This is okay, but this is not necessarily human readable unless you're like Cubestronaut material or you have a PhD or whatever, right? But the idea is they created all of these different hooks and components that you can then use to define an application, and they called it the open application model. I think it references it here somewhere. Yeah. So this OAM is sort of the thing about open application models, and they said you can define exactly what your app should look like, but in YAML, which is, as we all know, very easy, right? So you can define it in YAML, and then your deployment becomes something as trivial as just applying this YAML. And so I just bring up my Kubernetes cluster here, so it's just sitting there. And then I'm just going to do getting very nervous typing this in front of the cubestormers. Otherwise, so what you can see here is it will create this server here. And this server basically it deployed a container. The container is this this Express server, which is basically this image. And then it will create the deployments, the ports, and all of that. And then if I do a port forward, I can start accessing this application. So this is basically how we started to simplify some of the deployments. So instead of cobbling together a lot of different pieces, you can define them under the open application model in one YAML and do that. So even that is kind of difficult. Now, there's this whole Gen AI foundation, right? So you have models. Models can basically understand everything from what I type to YAML. It can do better YAML than I can, okay? Again, a lot of this is in English, and so it's not very hard for these models to process all of these and create YAMLs that I can use. And then there's agents that have the power to do deployments or to execute certain tasks remotely, and we saw a bunch of that in the talk before this and the talks before that, much less, but somewhat. And then there's MCP, or Model Context Protocol, and it sort of is a lot of people like to define it as, oh, it's the USB-C of everything. Obviously, they've not used Apple devices and Android devices and all of the USB-C that there can be. But the idea is that it creates a sort of homogeneity between a lot of these things. And if you really want to break MCP down, it's a nice wrapper around any REST-based service that you have. So there are REST-based services and there are the models. And in order for models to recognize and access and serve based on these REST-based endpoints, and if you want agents to trigger certain things on an endpoint, you basically wrap them as an MCP and operate. But anyhow, that's kind of outside the scope of this talk. But you have these three things that can really work well, and in my mind, it's like this. And so, can you bring these three together in order to solve some of the complexities that are associated with platforms? So, let's do that. So, I have Claude Desktop. People here familiar with Claude? Yes? No? Yeah, good. So for those who are not familiar, there is this company called Anthropic, okay, and it's going to be big in a few. It's already big. What am I talking about? So Anthropic has this tool, much like ChatGPT or whatever GPT, called Claude. Okay, and Claude is capable of. They were the first proponents of MCP, if I'm not wrong, and they basically said you can create these endpoints somewhere, and you can use Claude to access these endpoints because there's an entity called an MCP server in the middle that's orchestrating all these requests. So let's see what it can do for me. Okay, so on that side you'll see some movement, which means the demo is kind of working. So because this is trying to work with my Kubernetes cluster in like regular ChatGPT interaction kind of with prompts. That's what I was looking for, with prompts. Let's see if it can respond to my prompts. Do you have access to my Kubernetes cluster? If this doesn't work, I just blame it on internet here, but yes, I have connected it. Maybe, let's see. Oh yeah, I'll make it pick up the context. The command for that
List the Kubernetes.
Sorry?
Can we list the Kubernetes?
Yeah. It just doesn't have the context. One second. I'm just setting things up here. Give me 1 minute. My Kubernetes cluster to be picked up by Claude. And basically what it can do because of that is it can interact with all of my Kubernetes command in real time. So I'm not going to trouble you further with that. I'll definitely set it up. There's a couple of other MCPs that you can use. There's one by DigitalOcean. So DigitalOcean has an open source MCP server available. So if you're in the business of using DigitalOcean clusters, you can get access to this. There's also one by Azure. So Azure has an MCP server and you can make use of that. Very similar paths for all of them. So irrespective of what cloud provider you use, they all have an MCP server that can get you access to these. And I think there's a DO person in the audience somewhere. Yeah, there's an Azure person in the audience somewhere. Yeah, you can ask them a little bit about these and get information. And like I said, there's oftentimes a lot of complexity, but this looks like, again, sorry for not getting the demo up and running on time. I'll definitely fix it on the side and we can check it out. But is there a weakness in the system? Is there a kinch in the armor somewhere? And so there is this notion about AI and about what its capabilities are and how it can accomplish so much. But there's one thing that will prevent you from going like that and make you that way, which is, I don't know if you've heard of a story. This is very old. Obviously there's a hero, there's a very bad guy, and then the hero has to kill the bad guy, but he doesn't know how because the bad guy knows magic, kind of like AI. But then the life of the bad guy is inside a parrot, which is inside a cage. So if you kill the parrot, the bad guy will die, right? So like that, AI has a thing. It's like Superman and Kryptonite. Okay, so everybody, despite all of its thing, has a weakness. And I don't think if Superman was to land here, you don't have to show him Kryptonite. You can ask for Aadhaar card. He doesn't have the documents, and without documents, you all know how hard it is. And so that concept or that notion is non-determinism. So the big thing about AI is it will not do the exact thing you want it to when you want it to. Like, you cannot for sure say that 100% the response to a particular prompt will be this. And there's a lot of, this is a story in a movie if anybody's interested. There's a lot of math behind it, and Saturday afternoon is not the time to discuss all of that. But just understand that because of the complex nature and the probabilistic nature of this technology, non-determinism prevents AI from giving the exact same response, which is what you expect a machine to do. So if you have a machine and you program that machine to work in a certain way, it will work in a certain way. That's been our experience so far. But with AI, that's not the case. There is a degree of non-determinism that says that can make AI fail because it's not executing the right kind of thing. So obviously there's other work going on to prevent all of that and make it more deterministic and obedient and all of that. But it's non-determinism that's your job security basically. And then there's other things about these tools, which is that AI is not in production as conveniently as other applications have come to production. So people are still struggling with putting an AI in production, keeping the costs under control and making sure that AI can in fact function the way it is supposed to. And this path to production is not a solved problem. And so this is the last segment of the talk where I said there'll be a twist. And so it's the chance of platform tools to take all of their evolution from machine worlds to VM worlds to container worlds and apply that to a model world right now. So everything that we've learned about platforms in the past 10 years, both marketing and technical, will start applying to models right now. And so at the moment, the platform tools and the platform experience that you have is really going to help with making AI available in production. And so your jobs are kind of safe and you can all be happy and there's a great lunch to follow and do all that. So there are tools that are trying to solve the problem of how do you put AI in containers. I have a demo for that. The tool's name is GitOps. For want of time, we won't do it. But that's me on social media. Thank you so much for being such a patient audience. Thank you organizers for having me. Thank you Infosys for being such wonderful. I will get that demo running and we can chat a little bit more about it later. Really sorry about that. Thank you so much.